Imagine taking a job where every single shift could cripple you or kill you. You step inside a giant airtight chamber deep beneath the East River. A thick steel door slams shut behind you. Compressed air hits the room with a deafening hiss. Your ears pound, your chest tightens. The pressure builds until it feels like your skull might split apart. Then the chamber descends into darkness. Beneath the freezing river, men dig by the flickering light of gas lamps. They are trapped inside a colossal wooden box, buried in mud and rock. Sweat pours from their faces. The air reeks of smoke, wet timber, and river sludge. Some workers emerge coughing blood. Others collapse onto the docks, screaming in agony, unable to straighten their backs. Some never come back up at all. And the worst part? Nobody fully understands why it's happening. Yet day after day, they keep digging. Because in the late 1800s, America was attempting an engineering miracle, the greatest, most dangerous bridge ever conceived. In 1883, the Brooklyn Bridge opened as the longest suspension bridge on Earth. People called it the eighth wonder of the world. But the real story of the Brooklyn Bridge is not just about stone and steel. It's about obsession, sacrifice, death, corruption, and the woman who saved the entire project from collapse. Before the bridge existed, Brooklyn and Manhattan were separate, fiercely competitive cities divided by one dangerous stretch of water, the East River. Every day, tens of thousands of people relied on crowded ferries to cross between them. During brutal winters, the river froze solid, trapping boats in thick ice for days. Storms and violent currents caused deadly accidents. Commerce ground to a halt. Workers were stranded for hours on freezing docks. As New York exploded with population after the Civil War, city leaders realized a permanent connection was no longer optional. It was necessary. But there was one enormous problem. The East River was one of the busiest waterways in America. Towering merchant ships passed through it constantly. A normal bridge supported by stone pillars in the river would block vital trade routes. That meant building a bridge longer, taller, and stronger than anything ever attempted before. A bridge that would span nearly 1,600 feet in a single leap. Most engineers called the idea impossible. Then came John A. Roebling, a brilliant German immigrant engineer who had already stunned the world with his suspension bridges over Niagara Falls and the Ohio River. At the time, suspension bridges had a terrible reputation. Strong winds could twist them apart. Heavy loads could cause catastrophic collapses. The public simply didn't trust them. But Roebling believed he could change history. He pioneered the use of steel wire cables and developed stabilizing systems called web trusses that made suspension bridges dramatically stronger and safer. Now he was ready for his masterpiece. His vision for the East River was breathtaking. Two colossal granite towers styled like Gothic cathedrals, thousands of steel wires, and a central span that looked completely impossible. It would become the first great steel suspension bridge in history. But before construction could truly begin, the bridge demanded its first sacrifice. In the summer of 1869, while surveying the future bridge site near the river's edge, Roebling stood on a dock taking measurements. He never saw the incoming ferry. The massive boat slammed into the pier, crushing Roebling's foot against the timber pilings. Doctors amputated his toes, but infection spread rapidly through his body. 3 weeks later, John Roebling died from tetanus. Before a single tower rose above the river, the bridge had already claimed its designer. The impossible project now fell to his 32-year-old son, Washington A. Roebling. Washington was brilliant, but he was young, largely untested on this scale, and facing a skeptical public that believed the Roebling dream had died with his father. To build the bridge towers, workers first had to dig all the way down to solid bedrock beneath the river. To do that, Washington used a terrifying new technology: giant wooden caissons. Imagine an enormous bottomless box lowered directly onto the muddy riverbed. Compressed air was pumped inside to force the river water out, allowing workers to dig deeper and deeper beneath the river itself. Inside the caissons, conditions were a nightmare. The air pressure distorted human voices into strange, high-pitched squeaks. Gas lamps burned unnaturally hot and bright, filling the chamber with soot. Temperatures soared. Men worked surrounded by noise, darkness, mud, and smoke. And every second carried the threat of catastrophe. If the compressed air failed for even a moment, the East River could burst into the chamber instantly and drown everyone inside. Then came the invisible killer. Workers started returning to the surface with horrifying symptoms. First came joint pain, then blinding agony, paralysis, bleeding, violent cramps. Some collapsed where they stood. The workers called it the bends. Today, we know it as decompression sickness. Breathing compressed air forced nitrogen into the bloodstream. When workers surfaced too quickly, the nitrogen formed bubbles inside their bodies. More than 100 workers suffered from the disease. Several died. Then the invisible killer came for Washington Roebling himself. Unlike many chief engineers, Washington constantly entered the caissons personally. He refused to supervise from a safe distance. In 1872, the bends destroyed his health. At just 35 years old, Washington became partially paralyzed. He suffered chronic pain and became hypersensitive to light and sound. At times, he could barely leave his bed. Newspapers called the bridge a disaster. Politicians demanded a new chief engineer. Many believed the entire project was doomed. But Washington refused to abandon the bridge. Unable to visit the construction site, he directed operations from his bedroom window overlooking the East River. Through a telescope, he watched the granite towers slowly rise into the New York skyline. And that is when one of the most remarkable figures in engineering history stepped forward. Emily Roebling had never been formally trained as an engineer. In the 1870s, women were almost completely excluded from the worlds of mathematics, engineering, and heavy construction. But Emily refused to let her husband's life work collapse. Sitting beside Washington's bed, she began to study. She mastered advanced mathematics, engineering theory, cable construction, and material strength. She learned everything Washington needed her to understand. Then every day, Emily carried his instructions directly to the construction crews. Soon, workers and city officials realized something extraordinary. Emily Roebling wasn't just delivering messages. She was effectively running the Brooklyn Bridge herself. For years, she became Washington's voice, negotiator, and representative. She fought political attacks, supervised operations, inspected construction, and kept the entire project moving forward when many wanted it shut down. Without Emily, the bridge may never have been completed. By the late 1870s, the granite towers dominated the skyline. Now came the most dangerous phase yet: spinning the suspension cables. Thousands upon thousands of steel wires had to be stretched across the East River with absolute precision. The strength of the entire bridge depended on them. Workers balanced high above the churning water on tiny wooden platforms suspended in the open air. One mistake meant a deadly fall. Then another crisis exploded. A corrupt contractor had secretly supplied substandard steel wire weaker than required for the bridge. Some of the defective wire had already been built directly into the cables before inspectors discovered the fraud. The scandal threatened to destroy public trust in the entire project. Tearing the bridge apart would financially ruin construction and delay completion for years. So Washington Roebling made a daring decision. Because his father had designed the bridge far stronger than necessary, Washington ordered thousands of additional steel wires added to compensate for the weaker material hidden inside the cables. The bridge survived. Slowly, after 14 brutal years of construction, the impossible structure neared completion. Then, on May 24, 1883, New York erupted in celebration. Church bells rang across the city. Cannons thundered. Crowds flooded the waterfront. President Chester A. Arthur attended the ceremony alongside New York Governor Grover Cleveland. And before the official opening, one person was given the honor of crossing the bridge first, Emily Roebling. As she rode across the completed bridge in a carriage, she carried a rooster in her lap, a symbol of victory. From his bedroom window, Washington Roebling watched through a telescope as the bridge that had cost him his health, his strength, and years of his life finally opened to the world. Within just 24 hours, more than 250,000 people crossed the bridge on foot. The Brooklyn Bridge instantly became one of the most famous structures on Earth. But it did more than connect two shores. It transformed New York forever. The bridge accelerated trade, travel, and economic growth between Brooklyn and Manhattan. In 1898, Brooklyn officially joined with Manhattan, Queens, the Bronx, and Staten Island to form Greater New York City. The Brooklyn Bridge helped create modern New York itself. Today, millions cross the Brooklyn Bridge every year without thinking about the people who built it. The workers who dug beneath the river in darkness. The visionary who died before seeing his dream completed. The engineer who sacrificed his body to finish it. And the woman who refused to let the impossible collapse. The Brooklyn Bridge was never just an engineering achievement. It was proof that human beings could force impossible dreams into reality. And more than 140 years later, it still stands.